Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, we'll see how Arizona fared in a new report on government transparency. Hear about an effort to get more women involved in politics and how accurate are presidential candidates when referencing the U.S. Constitution. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. A report released today grades Arizona and other states on laws and practices that are meant to deter corruption and promote accountability and transparency. Here to tell us how Arizona fared is Evan Wylode, senior reporter at the Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting. He worked on the report for the Center for Public Integrity. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Ted.
As far as this investigative report, what was looked at here?
Well, there were about 250 questions that dealt with what is in law and the way that the laws are carried out with regard to best practices for accountability and transparency in state government.
So we're talking about everything from conflicts of interest to lawmakers with maybe too cozy a relationship with lobbyists, these sorts of things?
Exactly. Yeah, there were 13 different categories, each one with specific questions for that topic.
Arizona ranked 22nd, apparently, with a D grade. 22nd is about as close to the middle of the pack as you can get, huh?
Exactly. This measurement tool is a very stringent, yardstick, if you will. There was only one state that even scored a C, I believe, maybe two states, but that was the highest score that we saw among all the 50 states.
My goodness, so a D puts you in the middle. There were probably quite a few Fs then.
There were, I believe, 11 states that got Fs.
Wow. All right, let's get to some of the metrics here. Public access to information was one of the things looked at. Talk to us about that.
So for public access to information, Arizona scored an F, and there are parts of that make sense and are reflective of the situation. There are other parts where it doesn't quite capture the nuance of the law. In Arizona, any government business is considered to be public record. So if there are emails, if there are text messages that deal with what's happening in government, those are intended to be public record. Some of the questions, though, ask things like, is the governor's calendar in law a public record? And the answer is no. So we got dinged for that. But again, because the state's law is so vague and broad, it actually is a public record. So
the vagueness of the law was factored into as well?
Not exactly, and that's one of the reasons why we got a low score. We've got a broad law. It's considered pretty strong among the states. So, that one, again, there's some more nuance to our law in specific.
How do we do in terms of internal auditing?
So internal auditing is one of our strong points here in Arizona, and the reason for that is because it's very much not a political process. The Auditor General goes through every single agency. Every couple of years they cycle through, and there's very little or minimal interference from any elected officials. It's they employ accounting best practices, and it's very straightforward.
Okay, we did well there. Lobbying disclosure was another one. I'm not sure we do too well on that, or did we do well?
We did pretty poorly on lobbying disclosure, and for anybody who's paid close attention to the way that lobbying records are maintained, this probably comes as no surprise. There's very little, if you might say none, when it comes to inspection of what lobbyists are reporting. And a couple years back, we took a real hard look through that lobbying database and found hundreds of thousands of dollars reported inaccurately. We've doubled back on that just recently and found more inaccurate reporting as well.
Ethics enforcement agencies was another category. How did Arizona do there?
That's another one where we scored pretty weakly, and for people who have maybe watched some of the ethics enforcement at the legislature, you can understand why. It's a highly political process. If you had one situation one year, you might have one outcome. The next year with different lawmakers, you might have very different outcomes with the same situation.
As far as in general, Arizona did well under what kind of ideas and scored poorly in what kind of categories?
In general, well, it's tough. We did another section where we did pretty well was in judicial accountability. And for people who pay attention to the state's courts, they probably understand why. We have a very, it's a process called the merit-based selection process for our judges. It tries to ensure that there are highly qualified people coming in, and we have a very strong ethics panel that gives advisement to judges as well.
And we should note we've done a number of stories on this, that a lot of folks don't like that particular aspect of the judiciary here and want to change it. And they're constantly the courts are constantly trying to fight that and keep the status quo.
That's correct.
Time period that was included here, and the Corporation Commission obviously sounds like it would fit into a number of these categories. Was that included in this report?
The Corporation Commission was not looked at for this exactly, but we did look at across the board the way that this comes back to public access to information. You know, the Corporation Commission right now is embroiled in requests to see text messages, and that's an area of law that maybe some people disagree about. What exactly is a public record, and so that's really at the heart of the fight over at the Corporation Commission. But it wasn't like an exact category that we looked into.
Another fight, obviously, regards Susan Bittersmith, the commissioner, and her lobbying activities, and whether or not there is a conflict of interest there. Would that fall into some of these categories?
It does, yeah. And in fact, one of the questions for the lobbying section of this report card asked about disclosures of conflicts of interest. And because we might be asking for people to disclose their conflicts of interest, but not going back and checking on those things as a practice, we might run into these sorts of issues.
So as far as what we take of all this, how do we look at this report? What do we see about Arizona public policy and politics coming out of this report?
Well, hopefully, maybe some of the lawmakers here in Arizona will take a look at it and see an opportunity to improve some of these accountability and transparency measurements. There's definitely an opportunity to improve some of these things, but overall, about average.
And the report itself, do lawmakers, who is this report intended for? I mean, will lawmakers be presented with this? Will they come back to you guys or come back to the center, the Public Integrity Center folks, and basically say, okay, we're working on this or we're interested in that? I mean, where do we go from here on this?
Well, one of the nice features that they've built into this report is the ability to put your address in and click send, and send a note to your lawmaker asking them to take a look at the report and even give a little personal message in there.
So how can we find this report online?
It's run in a few places. We've got it on our website at the Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting. That's azcir.org. It's also run on the Arizona Republic, the Arizona Capital Times, I believe, the Arizona Daily Star, and you can find it at the Center for Public Integrity.
All right. Evan, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
The Arizona Capital Times is sponsoring an upcoming event designed to draw more women into politics and public policy. Here now is Ginger Lamb with more. She's Vice President and Publisher of the Arizona Capital Times. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Ted.
Thanks for being here. Before we get to the event, we got a pretty rich history of women in politics here, don't we?
We do. We had the Fab Five back in the 90s, and You know, the leadership of Arizona with a woman governor continued for almost 16 years consecutively. And now we have Michelle Reagan running the Secretary of State's office. We have Diane Douglas as Superintendent of Public Instruction. And it goes beyond that. So women have really done well in Arizona. And think that they've set the pace for things that have happened here. And I know when we did our event back in 2012, it was timed to be right after the elections. And we had Bruce Merrill from ASU come in and talk about what happened in the elections nationally that year. And not only did women pick up spots around the country in Congress and other leadership roles, but we did pretty well in Arizona then too.
You mentioned the Fab Five: Governor, Secretary of State, Attorney General, Superintendent of Public Instruction, and Treasurer. That's obviously the pinnacle there. Have the numbers, though, it seems like maybe they've steadily declined a little bit, or what do you think about that as far as state government is concerned?
They've declined a little bit in terms of the overall leadership at the statewide office level, but what we've seen is gains at the state legislature, and now almost a third of the legislature is made up of women. So we have done well.
Impact on policy, the impact on passing policy. Talk about the impact of having women as lawmakers.
Well, women, you know, they're running households, not all of them, but most of them are running households, they're running businesses. They have a lot on their plate and they're capable of making tough decisions, and I think that helps them to lead in those roles.
Are there differences, or do you hear others comment on the differences between a male lawmaker and a female lawmaker?
Well, I think if you look at some of the individuals who've come into politics recently, the tables have turned and things are different in terms of what they encounter now is what we may have encountered in the past. And I know in terms of my own career, there were things I encountered in the media when I was the only woman in the newsroom, or you know, just when I started as a publisher with our current company, there were only 2 women publishers. So I think women have really grown and we've assumed leadership roles and we've shown that we can lead.
As far as challenges for women in public office, I'm guessing the Old Boy Network still holds pretty strong in some arenas?
I think it does hold strong in some arenas, but there's ways to break through that. And I think as women, we support one another in that and can help with challenges. And other men help with those challenges too and how to navigate that.
Can it be more intimidating for women, or can it be a bit of an advantage at the Capitol, as a lawmaker, as a lobbyist?
I think for women, it's about opportunity, and we have a lot of opportunity to go in and make change, and we have opportunity to lead, and I think it's finding what may be a challenge or something in your path that's not allowing you to accomplish what you need, and you just go in and you conquer it, and look at it from a positive, that's an opportunity to make a real difference.
Is there a thought that there are women out there that have not entered the public arena, that are not involved with public policy? You may know them, other folks may suggest their names and it would come up for now. Are you hearing those names over and over, and what's keeping them out of this particular?
Well, that's the whole point of Women in Public Policy and why we created it quite a few years ago, is that we want to help women who are in business kind of put their toe in the water at the state capitol, because I think unless you're a political wonk or you're in the public policy arena, chances are when you hear politics and government, you might think, well, that's not for me. But nowadays it affects us in what we do personally and professionally. So what we're trying to do is advocate that any woman in business, whether that's at the Capitol or you're running a bank or an educational institution, a not-for-profit corporation, you need to put your toe in the water and get involved at the Capitol and make an impact.
So talk about the event now. When and where, and what exactly will go on?
Well, the event is November 18th at the Phoenician, and we start at 8:30 in the morning with registration and networking. We have a keynote at 9 o'clock by Secretary of State Michelle Reagan, and then we have 2 panel discussions. Our first panel is on education. We have a committee that helped us put together the agenda, and they've all talked about how as moms and business leaders, they're concerned about what's happening with education. We just had the governor's settlement, Common Core's no more, letter grades are going away. There's so many things, and it affects the future of our workforce. So we're going to have a panel to talk about that. We have Lisa Graham Keegan, one of the Fab Five, former Superintendent of Public Instruction, will be on the panel. Jana Day with Policy Connect is going to lead that discussion. We have the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Diane Douglas, is going to be part of that. Stacy Morley from AEA. And we also have a couple of other individuals. And then the second discussion is going to be led by Kathy Sensman from Policy Development Group. And we're going to talk about leadership and advocacy. You know, what are the tools that you need to succeed at the legislature? What types of advice are helpful? What if you're at point A and you want to go to point B? How do you get there, whether that's advancing in your career or maybe taking a hiatus and doing something else, or maybe it's, hey, I want to run for public office. So we're hoping that we're going to accomplish that and have the attendees leave with a lot of knowledge.
I would imagine networking will be a major focus of conversation on all panels and in all discussions.
Right.
Talk about the importance, especially for women now, and networking.
Networking's huge because this event, I'm always amazed. We have between 200 and 300 people from across the state that attend. And typically when I look at list of who's attending Arizona Capital Times event, 9 times out of 10, I know most of them. Women in public policy, there's always women who I have not met. So for me and all of the team at the Capital Times, it's a great opportunity for us to network too. But if you come to the event, you're going to meet women from across the state of Arizona that are in public policy, whether it's at the municipal level or the state level, and you're going to meet women who are running corporations.
So if someone's watching right now and she's thinking, you know, I'm more interested in this, I'd like to go down there. What do you expect her to take from the event? What do you want people to take from the event?
Well, what we want people to come to the event and see is obviously, you know, meet people who are in positions that are influencing what's happening in state government. We want people to network, meet those people. We want you to be educated and walk away realizing that I can get involved and I can have an impact and make a real difference.
All right, November 18th?
November 18th, and don't forget we have a fashion show over lunch and a fireside chat with Governor Jan Brewer that will be done by Jessica Pacheco from APS. And we'd love to have you as one of our male models for the event if you'd be interested.
I tell you what, I will get back to you on that.
Okay.
Maybe on the 19th, how's that?
I think I'll be reaching out before then.
It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ted.
Interpreting the Constitution and what the Founding Fathers intended for this country is often a major theme on the campaign trail, and this year's presidential race is no exception. Here to fact-check some candidate statements is Robert McWhirter. He's supervising attorney for ASU's Alumni Law Group and the author of a recent book on the Constitution. We had you on for that one. That's a great read. Good stuff there. Now, we wanted to get you back here because we're hearing a lot of stuff. Ben Carson, candidate on the Republican side, has actually written a book on the Constitution. In general, before we get to specifics, how often do these folks get this right? How often do they get it wrong?
They almost never get it right. And they usually get it wrong. And you've got to put that in context. Things under the Constitution develop, ideas about the Constitution develop, so they have certain trends that they go forward with. But they're, let's just say, all of them are self-serving in their reading of the Constitution.
Which a lot of folks are, though. That's one of the beauties of the Constitution, isn't it?
Right, and we have a process that the Constitution itself gives us to work all that out. So you bring your argument, I bring my argument, and there's a process to get an answer.
Let's start with Ben Carson. He's actually written a book regarding the Constitution as he sees it. And there's no debating the 13th Amendment ended slavery, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, no debate that the 22nd Amendment ended what was considered a pretty bad precedent by FDR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is correct, which was he kept getting reelected.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a couple of terms and that's ball game.
That's, yeah.
All right. He also writes that the Constitution forbids taxation. Is he right?
He is absolutely 100% wrong. There's the 16th Amendment, which says that the federal government can have a federal income tax. Now, if you want to say that people like James Madison and maybe even George Washington didn't believe there should be a federal income tax, well, you're correct. But the framers of the 16th Amendment, which provided for a federal income tax, said yes. And just one comment on that. Each amendment reshuffles the deck of what the Constitution means for the subject of that amendment. So the deck got reshuffled with the 16th Amendment.
But can it be argued that the deck has been reshuffled so many times we forgot what the original cards looked like?
You sure can, but you're stuck with what we changed. So if people come in and put in another amendment, the original intent, the framers of the Constitution now are the framers of the 16th Amendment. And that's the new framers that matter, not the framers back in 1789.
So when he says that the Constitution says that government cannot take money from one group to aid another, you say?
Of course they can. And the government has always done that. The federal government has over time done that. The greatest example of that is the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which took property, human beings, away from one group and gave them freedom. That is the greatest example of social engineering in the history of the United States.
He also writes that abortion is forbidden by the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. The idea being that because of that securing of the blessings, the unborn are included. Does he have a point?
It's an argument. And the idea that posterity are the people who have a right to life. And that would harken back to Jefferson's statement in the Declaration of Independence that everyone has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the right to life.
Yes.
That is the argument that gets made. And you can make a plausible argument about that. The trouble with that is it shows, and I'm not speaking about the moral question of abortion, but the fundamental understanding of the Constitution is what is the right of a private person's decision versus the role of government. And the constitutional decisions, Roe versus Wade and Casey versus Planned Parenthood, are based on the idea that an individual makes that decision, not government. Many times the very people who want less government in their lives actually want more government in people's lives when it comes to the abortion issue. Now, again, I'm not speaking one part or the other on right to life versus right to choose. I am only saying that the constitutional interpretation, people kind of like to ride different horses when it comes to their argument.
Mm-hmm. On the Democratic side, Hillary Rodham Clinton wants to fix the Second Amendment by holding gun makers liable.
Well, you can certainly do that. What happened was Congress passed some statutes which excluded gun makers from liability. The Constitution, at least as was originally written in the Second Amendment, really doesn't speak one way or another to that. What it says is that the right of gun owners will not be infringed, or the right to possess firearms will not be infringed. And if you argue that the infringement includes some government coming in and allowing you to sue a gun owner, well, then you can say the Second Amendment does that.
And Clinton also says that she would use an executive order to mandate background checks. Could she do that?
She could probably do that. A president probably could do that, unless, of course, that Congress came in and passed a specific statute that said the president couldn't. So there may be enough legislation under the Armed Career Criminal Act, which is on the statutes, to allow the president to do that.
Yeah, okay, so when she rejects the argument that the right to bear arms is fundamental, and others say, no, it is pre-political, it is fundamental,
yes.
Who has the advantage there?
The answer to that question is yes. And I'm sorry, you can make constitutional arguments each way on that question. If you want to go back to the original understanding of the Second Amendment, their world is so far different than ours. And what you're dealing with is a huge change in technology. The original framers of the Second Amendment never talked about a personal right to bear arms because arms were not particularly personal. It took a long time to load a flintlock. Mm-hmm. So personal protection arguments today. Now, the argument back then was we need the right to bear arms to withstand government tyranny. They understood that as the tyranny of the federal government, and they thought the way to withstand that is the state militias. In fact, some of the framers wanted to fight the entire Revolutionary War with the state militias, much to the annoyance of George Washington, who needed an army. So if you go back to that fighting tyranny argument, there's a good historical argument for that. The trouble with that argument today is To mount an effective fight against government tyranny, you would have to let everybody buy a tank. And we don't want, most of us don't want anybody to buy a tank, assuming that you and I could scrape to $22 million to buy an Abrams A1 battle tank, not counting outfitting costs. I don't think we want street gangs to have the power to buy tanks. So to really resist government tyranny, you need to give everybody the right to buy arms that I don't think we really want them to buy.
All right. Well, I have so many other things I want to, maybe we'll get you back here because Donald Trump, oddly enough, has said a couple of things that I think might be worth of
I'm shocked.
yes, worth a second chance, second look. Good to have you here. Thanks
My
for joining
pleasure.
us.
Thank you.
Tuesday on Arizona Horizon, we'll look into the increasing concerns over student debt, and Phoenix is recognized as a top digital city for technology use. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.